Lin Yi had lived to the age of 35 in his previous life. Famous from a young age, proud by nature. He had sung, acted, and was on the verge of achieving a grand slam of awards when he died. When he opened his eyes again, Lin Yi found himself in an interstellar era, reborn as a fragile and easily bullied Omega. Having just entered the entertainment industry, he was already drowning in scandals, publicly condemned by netizens as a two-faced schemer, a supposed angel on the outside with a heart of poison, being dragged and beaten down by public opinion. Lin Yi decided to set a few small goals for himself. First, clear his name, and then maybe casually seduce a few of the Empire's most powerful men. The empty bathroom was utterly silent. Splash! The surface of the bathtub, which had been calm and still, suddenly rippled with violent waves. Then, a hand shot out from the edge of the tub, gripping the cold, pale rim tightly. The fingertips, drained of color, flushed faintly red from the strain. A moment later, a wet head broke through the surface of the water and emerged from the tub. Having just broken free from the suffocating pressure that had wrapped around him, Lin Yi was soaked through, droplets clinging even to his eyelashes. His mind was clouded, his expression dazed. Then came 2 involuntary coughs, followed by several mouthfuls of water he had swallowed. He looked both disheveled and lost. After finally suppressing his coughing, Lin Yi lowered his gaze to his arm. The thin black shirt clung to his body, soaked tight against his skin. The exposed wrist was almost unnaturally pale, fragile, and tinged with a sickly look. The scene of the car accident before his death still vividly reflected in Lin Yi's mind. He was certain there was no chance of survival, but what was the situation now? He raised his hand and moved it slightly. His fingertips were cool. Though his body was weak, he could feel the vitality coursing through him. Lin Yi propped himself up and stood up from the bathtub. He had originally intended to take big steps forward, following his body's habitual movements, but before he could even stabilize, his legs nearly gave out. He staggered, barely managing to support himself against the wall. His head spun, and another memory suddenly surged up, entwining itself with him and quickly merging with his original memories. At the same time, Lin Yi's heart twitched painfully, accompanied by a sharp ache at the back of his neck. He reached back and pressed his hand against the nape of his neck, staggering as he steadied himself against the wall. With his legs still weak, he walked over to the mirror and looked at his face once again. The person in the mirror was a boy in his early 20s, far too slender and delicate in Lin Yi's eyes. In that moment, the 2 streams of memory explained everything to him. He had indeed died, killed in a mundane car accident on Earth, but somehow he had been reborn in this body, in this distant time and space. The new Lin Yi shared his name, yet in the blink of an eye, he had transformed from an ordinary man into a male Omega. Omega! Lin Yi muttered the word to himself. As he contemplated the traits it represented, he couldn't help but frown deeply, though the expression softened moments later. The original host's memories were enough for Lin Yi to understand the rules and background of this world inside out, allowing him to live flawlessly. Yet, to Lin Yi, the rules of this world were so utterly absurd that even the word fucked up felt too light. At the time of the original host's death, he had been on the capital planet of the First Empire. Around 200 years ago, the First Empire had ended its rapid expansion. After defeating all its rivals, it entered an unprecedented period of stability, and the capital planet was by far the most prosperous of all its worlds. Within the Empire, people were clearly divided into hierarchical classes based on both bloodline and attributes. Bloodline divisions had long exerted the most significant influence on the Empire. Take the capital planet as an example. Almost all its residents had undergone genetic optimization, resulting not only in outstanding appearances but also continuously enhanced physical abilities. The so-called attributes referred to the 6 classifications determined by sex and ABO traits. Alphas possessed the strongest constitution and held the majority of leadership positions in the Empire. Betas were average in every respect, the most numerous with ordinary reproductive ability. Omegas, on the other hand, were the weakest in both physique and appearance but had strong reproductive capability. In fact, it was the reproductive strength of omegas that once dictated their fate in the Empire. For a period, omegas were expected to rely on alphas and make reproduction their life's purpose. Under the Empire's current laws, alphas of different ranks could mark and claim between 1 and 4 omegas. Betas, by contrast, could mark or be marked at most once. Omegas, however, could only be marked by a single alpha and had to rely on him for survival, enduring the mating cycles unique to their reproductive physiology. Such a social structure should have been primitive, even animalistic, yet it existed within a civilization far more advanced than Earth's, a sprawling interstellar empire. In an era where people commonly lived to 300, the original host was only 22. A true child in every sense. Lin Yi's parents were researchers at a small company, both betas, living their entire lives on a minor planet. The only remarkable thing in their otherwise ordinary lives was perhaps that they had given birth to Lin Yi, an omega with above-average constitution. Unfortunately, when Lin Yi was 18, both his parents died in a spaceship accident, leaving him alone with only a modest inheritance, barely enough to support him through the Omega Academy on his home planet. The First Empire was not entirely disconnected from Earth, for legend had it that this civilization had originated as a branch of Earth's culture thousands of years ago. Yet humanity's migration from Earth had been fraught with hardship. Over time, countless near-extinction wars had broken out, and in the process, the majority of original records brought from Earth had been lost to history. As a result, the true appearance of Earth had been shrouded in an impenetrable veil of mystery. Humans are always drawn to their origins. As Earth was both the origin of the Empire and humanity's ancestral home, it held an important place within the Empire. People were eager to learn about the old Earth through reconstructed images. In recent years, archaeological discoveries, such as remnants of spacecraft in space preserving scattered Earth records, had fueled a fascination with Earth. For nearly 30 years, an Earth craze had swept across the stars. Riding this wave, some peripheral star systems, whose inhabitants could not afford genetic selection, found themselves in the spotlight. Those seemingly imperfect appearances were suddenly desirable. Lin Yi, for example, with his pure black hair and eyes and distinctly East Asian features, was a rare exception in the Empire, one in a million. Lin Yi looked up and gazed at his reflection in the mirror once more. He had not yet fully assumed his new identity, so the expression in the mirror still leaned more toward the original host. His lips were slightly pursed, his skin pale and delicate. The corners of his eyes drooped gently, and his dark, moist eyes made him look not only harmless but weak and easily bullied. And in fact, that was exactly who the original host had been. After graduating from school, the original Lin Yi had been discovered by a talent scout and brought to the capital planet to develop a career. Lacking any particular skills and with a naive, easily deceived personality, he had been convinced by a few flattering words from the smooth-talking scout to fantasize about the glamorous life of a future star. After arriving on the capital planet, the original Lin Yi quickly landed a commercial, gaining a small measure of fame. Unfortunately, before he could even feel happy about it, he learned that the opportunity had actually been specifically arranged for him by a wealthy businessman, and the reason for being singled out was, of course, perfectly clear. The businessman soon began contacting Lin Yi, making it clear that he wanted him as a lover. While an alpha could legally marry several omegas, this man was only interested in a fling and had no intention of openly clashing with his wife. Lin Yi, who respected simple and genuine relationships, could not accept such an immoral arrangement, and he enraged the businessman. Yet he had not anticipated that the man was merely a boastful figurehead, entirely dependent on his wife's family for his lifestyle. When the wife discovered a supposed connection between him and Lin Yi, the man turned the tables, shifting all blame onto Lin Yi and claiming that Lin Yi had been the one seducing and entangling him. The man's wife was headstrong and ruthless. She had dealt with countless affairs of her husband before, and her methods were merciless. This time, she directly ordered someone to damage Lin Yi's glands, permanently destroying his reproductive ability. In this era, an omega who could not reproduce or even release their pheromones was little short of a monster. After the injury, Lin Yi was hospitalized. Unable to afford the expensive surgery required to repair the damage, he missed the critical window for recovery. Soon afterward, he was declared permanently unable to restore his glands and had lost his fertility forever. Before he could even recover from this blow, he saw the news reports. Countless media outlets unanimously implied that the injury had occurred because Lin Yi had attempted to interfere in another's marriage and tried to harm the spouse. This triggered a tidal wave of ridicule and abuse against him across the internet. The original Lin Yi could only pin his hopes on the imperial police, praying that a proper investigation would bring him justice. Yet the case sank like a stone into the sea. Although the officers who visited him more than once expressed sympathy, there was never any further news of his case. It was clear that someone powerful had intervened to suppress it. Soon after, the company that had hired him for the commercial sued him for breach of contract, claiming his tarnished image had violated the agreement, and demanding a sky-high compensation fee that Lin Yi could never repay, not even in several lifetimes. For someone who couldn't even afford his medical bills and whose apartment lease was soon to expire, this was the final straw that broke the camel's back. In despair, the original Lin Yi chose to end everything with death. The life Lin Yi had experienced before death was, compared to the original hosts, the complete opposite. His mother was a renowned singer, and his father a celebrated veteran actor in the country. Born under such public attention, and raised with strict family guidance, mediocrity was nearly impossible. Moreover, Lin Yi had inherited all of his parents' best qualities, displaying astonishing talent from a young age. From the age of 16, when he won his first significant Best Actor award, and for nearly the next 20 years, Lin Yi's life was hailed online as almost cheating at life. Whether as a singer or an actor, he effortlessly surpassed all his peers, leaving other male stars far behind. Whenever anyone mentioned Lin Yi, praise was nearly unavoidable, with people claiming even heaven itself couldn't have given him enough advantage. Over those 20 years, the name Lin Yi became synonymous with genius. Yet no one could have expected that the life of such a person would come to a sudden end at 35. Lin Yi had never feared death, but he had never imagined that, after dying, he would be reborn in another time and space, in someone else's body, and that this new life would be in such a miserable state. He took a deep breath, fingers brushing over his shirt buttons, slowly removing the clothes soaked through with moisture. He turned on the nearby heater to warm his slightly chilled body. Lin Yi ran his hands through his hair. In the light, the veins on the back of his hands faintly showed beneath his pale skin. In just that short moment, the gaze in the mirror had completely changed. Proud, cold, and distant, no trace of the original host remained.